Welcome back to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg,
And I'm Emily.
and we're continuing our Edgar Allan Poe exploration with number 76 in Poe's bibliography. We've come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a short story titled The Businessman, which is not one of his better known stories. It was published in Burton's Gentleman's Magazine
Ooh,
in
gentleman.
February of 1840, and it has an alternate title of Peter Pendulum.
Oh,
And I, of course, read it in my gigantic edition of from Suntop of the Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe.
and I have several collected works of Edgar Allan Poe. Actually, this one
She
was
has one
a,
too.
yeah. So this one I read from volume 4 of the collected works of Edgar Allan Poe, which I got from Project Gutenberg.
Oh,
So that's where I found this story. But yeah, it's a comedy. And that's one of the interesting things that I didn't know until we started reading and delving into this is that Edgar Allan Poe wrote quite a few very funny comedies. I enjoyed this one. Greg, you said you struggled with this one a little bit, right?
I didn't get it. I
Yeah,
mean, I kind of got it, but not really.
yeah. It's kind of an absurd humor, and it does use a lot of language too that you really have to read between the lines of.
Okay. I
So
guess I didn't do that. I just read surface and
yeah, and even surfacey, I still understood it, but like there's a very large vocabulary that goes into Poe that I think a lot of modern readers do struggle with because it is very old-fashioned wording and vocabulary. So
okay.
I'm not unless you are really as long as you have read classics and can comprehend a lot of classics, generally speaking, I feel like you can pretty well understand what Poe is saying. But this definitely uses language that I'm not used to seeing Poe utilize. Like
Okay.
he has pretty large vocabulary in a lot of his well-known works, but
Mhm.
this is exceptional. And I think that's mostly because the character thinks he's smarter than he is. So the whole story is basically a man as he's growing up and becoming a businessman. He claims
And
that
it's
his
it's him talking through this whole thing.
yes, he's narrating his first person narration.
Hmm.
And it starts off with him how he began being so smart was one day he was told to clean up his room by his nanny and she whacked him on the head so hard it knocked him silly, but he thinks it knocked him smart. So he to that day thinks that, oh, well, she definitely made me the man I am today from that fateful day of knocking me on the head so hard that I finally got some reason put into me and I decided to be a much more organized and practical human. So he starts off kind of by saying, when he turned a young man. His parents tried to get him a job, and he just could not get along with his boss or understand the job because it was all so impractical and disorganized and not the way he would have done it. So he decides to run away. And his first job, as he decides to become nomadic and run away, is a walking advertiser. But he's not actually a walking advertiser. He's going and buying clothes or like trying to buy clothes on credit and then goes to a town square and tells everybody where he gets all this really great fine clothes and tries to bring them back business and then tries to invoice them for it.
Hmm.
So he's not really a businessman. He's just trying to like doing normal human everyday stuff. But he has no money, so he's trying to make money or say like, "Oh, you owe me this clothes because I brought you all this business."
Hmm.
And tries to invoice them. And getting into altercations with these business people who are trying to actually run a legitimate business. So there's a lot of absurd humor like that where he that's one of his first ones. Another one is like he goes into the business of beating up people where he just goes around and like starts fights with people who seem like people who want to start fights, like the Karens of the world, and then charges them for beating them up. And then he realizes, oh, but I could sue them for harming me. So he starts kind of getting in cahoots with his lawyer, who is just beside himself about this guy, trying to make money as basically a charlatan or a guy
Mhm.
who instigates issues and then sues people.
Mhm.
So it's just these really absurd situations where he's calling it business, where he makes money, but it is not legitimate work.
Right.
And so it's hilarious. It's really funny, and like this guy's just an absolute moron and has absolutely no idea that he is one. And it's just him recounting the tales of all these amazing business things that he had, but they didn't go well because it's someone else's fault always. It's
Hmm.
never his fault.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's funny that this is in a gentleman's magazine to me too.
Yeah.
So that's basically the story. And it's kind of, I think it's funny because it's all the like, it's making fun of people who do this shitty stuff. Because there are
Hmm.
people who do this. Like, there are
Oh yeah.
people who professionally get in car accidents,
Hmm.
especially in the state of Florida. That's a
Hmm.
common problem because it's a no fault state and they can
Or
sue
in
you.
Chicago, they walk up and do your windows and then tell you have
Yeah.
to pay them, and you're just
Yeah,
sitting at
or
the
they,
stoplight.
come and have, hey, I got this concrete, can I fix the big crack in your driveway with it or something? And then they're like, you owe me $800 for that.
Hmm.
That kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So it's this guy thinking he's such a smart businessman when he hasn't done anything that's considered a legitimate business. He's just looking to get rich quick.
And that's the interesting thing about the story is it does start out him talking about himself as a successful businessman,
Yes.
and really taking kind of an attitude about it.
Very
And
self-righteous.
so you just get your picture in this mind that this guy must be some big shot
The
executive or
Monopoly
something.
guy comes to mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
And then as you go through the story and by the time you get to the end, you realize what a charlatan this guy
Yeah.
is.
He's
He's,
absolutely a bum. In fact, he tries to be a bum at one point.
and you wonder, is Poe trying to poke fun at all businessmen this way?
Mhm.
Is he trying to say that all businessmen really are just these charlatans?
Yeah. And it is interesting to try and read this as a social commentary, I think, because I
Hmm.
think, especially in modern times now, we are questioning the validity of the power of corporations,
Hmm.
especially in American society right now.
Hmm.
So, from our American perspective, that's a big question. And there's also like the question of, well, if a stripper can make an average of 40,000 a year being a stripper and mostly on tips, you start wondering what is legitimate business and what isn't.
Hmm.
Or like OnlyFans, like people making millions of dollars being OnlyFans model or making millions of dollars being influencers.
Hmm.
It does bring up the question of what is legitimate business
Yeah.
and what isn't.
Hmm.
So it's kind of fun to look at this from our common perspective or our more contemporary perspective and see that some things don't change.
Yeah.
There still are just as many charlatans and ways for people to be sleazy and stupid. And
Hmm.
it brings up a lot of questions too that I think we naturally ask ourselves. Like, I think it's normal for a human to walk down the street and see a homeless person and be like, if I give him money, will he just use it for drugs?
Yeah.
Or is he going to use it in a way that's actually helping him?
Hmm.
Is he actually going to buy food with it? Is he actually going to buy, better clothes for himself? What happens, and where does my responsibility end
Hmm.
and his begins, or vice versa? So it's interesting to kind of read a story like this, but it's also hilarious because it's very tongue in cheek.
Okay.
Yeah, you're like, I don't get it.
That's the part I didn't, because you had said that before I read it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going into this reading expecting humor, and I think it had a lot to do with where I was at that
Mm-hmm.
moment,
And that is
that
a big
I just
factor.
wasn't seeing anything all that funny about it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like,
It's
I
funny
don't
in
get it.
absurdity.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I saw the absurdity by the end. I saw, he was that I thought he was making some kind of social commentary
Mm-hmm.
and being satirical, but it wasn't coming across to me as funny.
And I think some of that was the language because he was using very serious and very large vocabulary, probably to reinforce. how self-righteous and how smart this guy was trying to be.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of do get lost in translation if you're not if if you're not in the right headspace or have the cognitive ability to kind of read between the lines or to like I think sometimes it's a blessing to be dyslexic because I skip over the parts that I don't understand or the words
No.
I don't understand, and then I just basically read more by context than by actual words.
Okay.
In that case, I think this helped me understand the story. But if you're actually reading the words, it's very confusing
Mm.
because he's all fluff. This character
Yeah.
is all fluff,
Yeah.
and it's written with all fluff.
Okay.
So it's kind of a difficult read if you're
Okay.
not used to large vocabularies and a lot of classic literature.
Right.
And I do feel like it's very outside the realm of what we've usually seen from Poe.
Yeah, it is.
It's so out there. Like, even from his other comedies, had much more plain language.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
So it's different.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't call it a top tale,
Okay.
personally. Just because even though it's funny, it is for such a certain audience that I don't think it has the universal themes, and I don't think it has. I just don't think it's as accessible to people
Okay.
because of how it's written.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if you like that sort of thing, or like a good complex comedy or absurd comedy, and you feel like you could read it, I say go for it. But it's not one that I think I'd recommend for everyone.
Right.
So that's really all I have to say about this one. I don't.
Okay.
There's not much more to say unless you want to start talking more about the political or social commentary it might be making or is making, but
Well, yeah, and we could have probably a 4-hour
yeah,
conversation
I'm afraid
about
to
that.
go down that road. But if we have a 4 hour conversation in comments, I don't mind that either. So if you guys have commentary and have read the story or want to read the story and dialogue with us, please do. We highly encourage it. We would love to hear from you. And we would love to know what your thoughts are about a story like this, especially because Poe comedies don't get a lot of exposure.
No, like I say, I had never heard of this one before,
I hadn't either until.
and I had never read it. It
Mm-hmm.
was totally new to me and kind of unexpected. Along with his next one, number 77, The Philosophy of Furniture.
Ah, I've heard of it, but I have not personally ever read that one, so I'm really
It's got
interested
me
to see it.
curious. What the
Yeah,
heck
interesting.
philosophy about furniture could you be making a story out of?
Let's see.
So come on back and join us for that one and many more at Edgar Allan Poe. We've got a long way to go yet.
Yeah, we've got quite a
As
list.
far as we're in, we've got a long way of these to go, and we got a lot of other authors we're talking about. Come back and see all of them, and otherwise like this and subscribe to us so that we can get boosted a little bit on YouTube, something that we're always constantly struggling with,
Mhm.
keeping us from being buried in the YouTube algorithm.
Content.
And you can help us by putting comments on and liking the videos and making sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit the alerts so that you know when I post more
Yeah,
videos. I guarantee Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, but I also sneak a lot of others in as
just a
I
little fun.
read something and I think I want to do a video about this, and she doesn't even know anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, I hear about it later,
Yeah.
but hey, it's fun. Or sometimes I watch the videos because I'm like, oh, what did he post now? What was he reading that I don't know about?
Uh-huh.
It's kind of fun though. I like that because it's kind of a little surprise, like a little Christmas gift to see. Oh, Greg posted something for us. What is it?
I read so much, and there's no way you could ever
You
keep up
are,
with me.
yeah, you are a machine. I don't know how you do it. Like I'm a pretty fast reader,
Yeah.
but I do need a lot of
I've gotten
contemplation.
faster lately. I've gotten a lot faster.
Good for you.
Just so doing so
Mhm.
much reading, I've gotten a lot faster.
Yeah. And I think too, the reason I do read so fast is because I do read context more than the actual words a lot.
Okay.
I think that's why I'm such a fast reader, but it also means I have to process more. So I do take time in between. But anyway, enough about that. Thanks for joining us, guys. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.